Hi, and thanks for tuning into Street Life. I'm Natasha, and this is Season 1, Episode 7 of Rolling with RAQ. In this episode, I'll be recapping and discussing Power, Book 3, Raising Kanan, Season 1, Episode 7, Stay in Your Lane. I'm going to say this here before we start. This episode is going to be probably a little bit longer, as the 7th episode of Raising Kanan is probably my favorite episode of the season. I like that it pretty much builds you up to break your heart. Because it's like everyone kind of gets what they want in this episode, and you kind of get a glimpse into how things could be if they lived happily ever after. But things kind of go left. And I like this episode because of how everything comes together. So it picks up where the last one left off, where Scrappy's in the hospital and RAQ is now leaving visiting him. Meanwhile, Lulu is stalking out Warrell's apartment as they're going to hit back at him. Warrell is returning from what looks like a date or some time out with his lady friend, which is surprising because, well, not really, right? Here it is that you have all of them where they have their street lives. And then each and every one of them has some kind of home life where it's like they're not these hardcore drug dealers 24/7. Each and every one of them has either a kid or a significant other. Someone that they care about is waiting at home for them. Warrell has this girlfriend or whoever this lady is. We don't really know. But the point is that she's there. The two of them look like they're returning from what looks like maybe a night out or a date or something like that. And Lulu is sitting outside just watching and waiting. He touches base with RAQ, who is leaving the hospital on her way to go and meet up with Kanan. Warrell and his lady friend have settled in. And Lulu decides that he's now going to make his way into the apartment to take his shot. For whatever reason, he's decided to use a Tech 9. This is an apartment. It's not that big. The room looks to be a bit small. He's going to be in close range. I get the idea that he wants to ensure that he hits Warrell, but I think a handgun would have been a better idea, as he misses him. But then again, it seems like since the killing of D-Wiz, that Lulu's gotten more involved into music and his heart just isn't really with the street stuff anymore. Like he just isn't with it. And so he takes a shot at Warrell, but given his approach, bringing this big gun to this small space where a smaller gun would have been far more efficient and dependable really made me wonder, like, did he really want to take a shot at this guy? I mean, he's not a hitman, but at this point, it would seem that he's got some experience with this kind of stuff. I would think that he'd be better prepared and that he wouldn't be such a terrible shot as to let off his gun at this guy in such a small space and still manage to miss it. Tavern on the Green was a really popular restaurant in New York. It was located in Central Park. I had the opportunity to visit twice. Once was during the day and the other was at night. Both times the venue was very beautiful, but it's like a special place to visit at night because it has these like glass walls, or it might be like plastic, whatever it is, but they light the place up at night and it's extremely beautiful. You can see out into the park, the trees, the building itself, the structure and whatnot are all lit up at night, and you get like this really nice view. It has a really nice vibe. RAQ is meeting Kanan and his now girlfriend Davina at this restaurant. And just for context, Tavern on the Green, I mean, I never paid to eat there, right? I went there for 2 events. But from my understanding, it's a fancy place from what I've seen. And that usually means the place is super expensive. Now, how much an entree was, I really don't know. But for a high school kid who has no job to be able to afford to go there, it kind of gave me pause. And that he invited his mom out for dinner and his lady friend, I had some questions. So it's an opportunity for RAQ to meet Davina. And it's not so much that she's uncomfortable with Davina, but it's more like, you know, Kanan is her baby and she has high expectations for any girl that's going to deal with him. You know, but she's not like some of these moms that's like mean to Dean or anything like that. She's actually quite nice to her, complimenting her and whatnot. But unbeknownst to her, there's like a surprise for her as well, in addition to this dinner. There had been some tension between her and Symphony the last episode as a result of him kind of covering for Kanan. And so when he makes his appearance, because they'd kind of broken up a little bit, I was excited because I shipped the two of them together, right? Like I want RAQ to end up with Symphony. As long as, you know, his character remains the character that he's been shown as being so far on the show. So when Symphony popped up, I was so excited. I was so happy and I wanted them to get back together and be happy forever. RAQ did not share my feelings. And immediately upon seeing Symphony, like, you know, Kanan is also happy and excited, and he's smiling at her. But the look that she gave him when she realized that the surprise was Symphony, if looks could kill, it's like his smile just immediately turned upside down with the look that she gave to Kanan. You know, because it's kind of like, you know, oh, like I've messed up here. I realized like maybe this might not have been the thing to do. But instead of like yelling at him or causing a scene or anything like that, she just quickly gets up and starts heading for the exit. So Kanan initially gets up to go after her, but Symphony tells him to sit back down, that he's going to take care of the situation, at which point he follows her outside the restaurant. And the two of them have what ends up being a cute exchange. You know, like this is one of the things that I just love about Symphony. Like he's not a cool guy at all, right? Like putting aside what he looks like, because he's very, very handsome. The character is not written to be like this cool, suave guy or whatever, right? But that's like extremely cute. He's not like pretentious or anything like that. He's just himself. You know, he likes RAQ. He tells her that he likes her. And there's not a lot of like, you know, fronting and whatnot going on. He doesn't take himself too seriously. Just a sweet guy, right? Like really nice personality. He's just adorable. And being comfortable with who he is really cute. Like he's outside of this situation. He's actually pretty honest and straightforward with RAQ, right? Like about his feelings and everything else. He kind of apologizes to her for not telling her about the situation with Kanan. And so he explains that from this moment forward, he's going to be very honest with her about everything. So he starts telling her like his secrets, right? Things that he's never shared before, which is that he likes Hall & Oates. It's like, I listen to a lot of old school music, right? Hall & Oates is not on my list, but he admits to her that he likes, you know, these so-called white bands, which nothing wrong with that. You can like different kinds of music. But then he starts singing, and Symphony cannot sing whatsoever. And so here he is in the front of the restaurant, not like being loud to the point of being a nuisance, but just loud enough that if anybody else is walking by, they're going to hear you and your caterwauling out here. And so it's like, there you have RAQ, and she's just like standing there looking around, and here's this man with his non-singing self singing to her in public. And I just thought it was like a cute little funny moment between them, right? And so I actually like men that can't sing but insist on singing anyway, right? Not like loud and annoying, but like they still sing along to the song even though they sound terrible, right? Like don't let that stop you unless like you have a voice where you probably should stop. But I just thought that whole exchange, it was like one of the things that makes this my favorite episode. That whole exchange and stuff, him with not keeping secrets and then like adding on to it that he also can't dance. I just thought it was incredibly cute. Like the way that they write Symphony is just like, he sounds so cuddly, you know, like who wouldn't like Symphony? I see why RAQ likes him. And he brings out like some of her better points. You know, he's a positive presence in her life. And I just like the two of them together. Not to say that I don't like her by herself, but she's kind of like nicer when she's with him. And, you know, he's just a sweetie pie. I just like the two of them together. You know, so he admits to her that like, you know, he likes to sing this song. And it's like an old people band. He admits like all of this uncool stuff to her as like a way of showing her that, you know, it's like him being vulnerable, but also showing her that he's going to be honest and open with her from here on out. You know, usually I'm not really into TV shows where the characters go back and forth with relationships. Like one minute they're together, the next minute they're not. Like I'm not like a romance TV kind of person. That's not my thing. But in this particular case, like I just love this exchange between them. I like them as a couple. I think it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. I just like them together. So I love this whole part of the episode. It shows you that what things could be like for them. Here it is that they've left the south side of Queens. They're in Manhattan for a night out in the town. Kanan's there. He's on a double date with his mom and her boyfriend. Like, they're not married or anything like that. But for all intents and purposes, it seems like Kanan and Symphony have now built a pretty good relationship. They have good rapport. Because Kanan would have been the one to take the initiative to reach out to him, right? Because RAQ certainly isn't talking to him. And I highly doubt, it doesn't sound like he's reached out to RAQ either. But Kanan, because he messed up, he took steps here to kind of rectify the situation. He's been kind of, you know, messing up thus far. But you can see him and Symphony starting to build a relationship of their own, right? Like they're pretty comfortable around each other. They have good rapport. I think part of this is because of Symphony's approach, both to RAQ and then also to Kanan, in that he didn't come in like, trying to be his dad, bossing him around, but he also didn't come in and try to be like his best friend. He came in, and as with RAQ, he was just himself. And just like with RAQ, that the two of them hit it off, here with Kanan, you have that given time for things to just unfold. And he's now a positive role model in Kanan's life. Like the men outside of his uncles sell drugs, right? They're not completely bad people, but they're not the most positive examples of manhood. And here you have Symphony, who's not a drug dealer. And especially at this point in time when he comes into Kanan's life, Kanan is kind of coming to a crossroads. He's young and he could still he's made some mistakes and messes up a bit, right? But he's at the point where he hasn't completely destroyed his life. But the window for him being able to make those mistakes without completely ruining his life is kind of narrowing, right? So he's going to have to make a choice about what path he's going to go down. So dinner is ending, and he offers to pay the bill. Symphony offers to pick up the bill instead and tells him to put his money towards his college fund, which Kanan doesn't really brush off. He kind of accepts it like, yeah, that might be an option for me. And this is part of why I think like Symphony is like the perfect guy for RAQ to be dating right now. Because you can see that if him and RAQ are together, Kanan likes him. They'd have to have interaction, right? They'd come into contact with each other, and he could be a positive influence on Kanan. These other guys that she's dated, they weren't completely bad people, right? But it doesn't sound like either one of them would have been as good an example or like as good a positive representation of manhood as Symphony. Even if you look like in the previous episode where they're getting ready to go to the showcase, and RAQ mentions that it's one of those moments that she wishes he had like a dad or she had like a man in her life to help her in these moments with Kanan, right? Symphony is like the perfect man for that job. I'm sure he knows how to tie a tie, right? He's a positive guy. He's a positive role model for Kanan. But at the same time, he's also someone that you can see RAQ loving as well. Like RAQ mentions when Kanan was a baby, the other moment she wishes she had a man around, she had to take him to get his shots, right? And she wishes that he had like a dad or something like that to be the one to take him. And Kanan mentions that DEFCON does not sound like the kind of guy that would be taking a baby to like a doctor's appointment, like their wellness checkup. But Symphony sounds like such a guy, right? Symphony sounds like the type of man that would take his kid to a doctor's appointment. Like, it's too much for RAQ to hear the kid crying because he's getting shots or whatever. Like Symphony would probably step up to the plate and take the kid to the doctor, and so it's just this energy that he brings to their lives that I just really like. It adds like balance, right? So love abounds in all corners because, Nicole and Jukebox are on their own, taking a stroll in Manhattan. And, they're talking about this ball that she has coming up and, like what they're going to wear and stuff like that. And, it's just sweet. It's like everyone, like all the drama has been set aside for the night, except for Lulu trying to shoot at Worrell. And everyone's like in love and having a great time. And the four of them are walking to the car and stuff like that. And they have a cute little exchange. They joke around with each other. A lot of times you don't really hear, like outside of maybe being around Symphony or Kanan. And right now, like quite often Kanan's annoying her. You don't really see RAQ laugh and joke around a lot. Not so much with other people. But here it is, like they have like this, there's like another educational moment from Symphony. And like, Kanan kind of playfully brushes it off. But we know from narration that he actually likes that constantly dropping knowledge, right? So it's like, although he kind of pretends like he doesn't want to hear it, he actually does enjoy these little tidbits that Symphony shares with them. And it's like just the exchange. It's so normal. It's such a break from all the stuff that had been going on with them. It's like it helps to balance the show out, right? That they have these serious moments, you have these dramatic moments, there's danger and stuff, but in the midst of that, they'll interject like a little bit of humor. You'll have all that stuff going on, but then it's like they'll interject these like nice little moments between Symphony and RAQ, or between Jukebox and Nicole, or here you have now between Kanan and Davina. It's like it helps to add some balance, so it's not just this constant street business stuff going on, right? I think if it was, they don't really go super heavy with like the violence. But I think if it was just a lot of that, just constantly all the time without these little breaks and whatnot, the show would have a far different feeling, right? Adding in these little moments, these little breaks in tension kind of helps to balance out the show, and it makes it all the more enjoyable. So the two couples part ways. Kanan and Davina, they get a ride home in RAQ's, I guess, driver, you would call him, takes them home in her truck. And so now they're standing outside of her house kissing. And it's at this moment that she tells him that she heard Famous's song, in which he's like detailing the murder of Buck 20 and all this kind of stuff. Kanan tries to downplay it by stating that, Famous was just talking about something he doesn't know of, that he's just a rapper running his mouth, but he's not in the streets. But it kind of gives Davina pause, because she knows that Kanan is like dibble-dabbling in the street stuff. And even if Famous wasn't there, sounds like it probably came from someone that was there, and she suspects that Kanan might have been that person. Very valid concerns, But at the same time, playing devil's advocate, when did she hear this song, right? Because she agreed to go out on this date with Kanan. She's there at the restaurant and stuff, having dinner and whatnot with them. Why'd you wait until after the date to voice your concerns, right? Like, why don't you say something before dinner? Or even like during the drive home or something like that. It's like, what changed in that time from when you were at the restaurant to now when you're at the house? But anyway, they get back to the house and, they're outside canoodling in front of her house. And it turns out the neighbor's been keeping her little sister. And the neighbor tells her to come and get the baby because she has to, go to sleep so she can go to work the next day. But there's still this thing of that her mom is missing. Her mom still hasn't popped back up. Essentially, she's like stuck raising this child that she shouldn't have to take all of this responsibility for, and so I kind of give her grace with the situation with Kanan and the song, because she seems like a sweet young lady, right? But here it is that she's dealing with all of these very adult responsibilities. So back at Symphony's place, he's there with RAQ. They've made up, and he is on the verge of resuming his position as her official cheek clapper. But like in the process, they're like making out and whatnot, and she's kind of rushing things along. But being the gentleman that he is, my guy Symphony, he kind of tells to slow down, that they don't have to rush or anything along those lines. And I think it's a pretty astute observation, right? Where this is kind of like a control thing with RAQ, right? RAQ pretty much controls everything, or she tries to. She tries to control everything and everyone around her. And in this case, like by rushing things with Symphony, it's just another way of her trying to control the situation. And he takes the time to point that out. This is a woman who's used to kind of dictating when, how, and to what degree everything happens. And here with him as well, she's kind of rushing the point. But he nicely lets her know, like, you can relax. You don't have to control everything. And I think part of this need to control things is that the people around her are not necessarily dependable, as we see in her dealings with her brothers. Symphony tries to reassure her that, like, you don't have to control everything. I've got you. You can rely on me. You can trust me. You don't have to feel like you have to take control of everything for things to get done. You don't have to worry about that with me. And just, it's sort of like when they were going to be intimate for the first time, like they had a similar conversation. He didn't know her well enough at that point to realize, well, like, listen, she's kind of like a control freak. But he was like nice enough to try to reassure her that, this doesn't have to happen right now. Don't feel any kind of pressure or anything like that. But in this instance, he better recognizes her rushing things along as an attempt to control the situation. It's like a security blanket of sorts for her, right? That being in control makes her feel secure. But he tries to reassure her by letting her know that, you don't have to control everything. I've got you. You can relax, be easy with me. And I actually thought that was like a really nice touch, because here's this person that has so many people that are dependent on her, but that they're constantly messing up with her. I think from that, she kind of develops this attitude like, if I want the job to get done, I've got to do it myself. But it's like, Symphony kind of shows her, like, you don't have to be that way. Like I've got it. Don't worry about it. It's me and you here and whatnot. Don't feel like I'm not going to let you down. As for Howard, he's a creepo. I don't know. For his first interaction with Kanan, rolling up with this, your mom used to love me back in the day kind of nonsense. And especially after he's been like bothering RAQ, to now just be constantly popping up and whatnot. This whole, did you ask your mom about me? Did she tell you about me? Why don't you just tell me what it is that you want to tell me, sir? Instead of like rolling up like a creeper and just being like overly invested in things. Like, why would you approach Kanan like that? Even if you wanted to suggest to him like, oh, I'm your dad, the way that he approaches him is it's just so weird. So RAQ is trying to figure out the situation with the Connect. And Juliana is able to get her in touch with her cousin, right? Provides her with the address and whatnot. But she actually takes a moment to stop RAQ by like reaching out and touching her hand, for lack of a better phrase, confirming, yes, you've decided to work with us here, working at the stash house, but I also chose you. This whole stash spot thing is really a way for both of them to start building a relationship with each other, right? Leading to RAQ eventually making the move to connect with her cousin. But, Juliana states that she specifically chose RAQ because she knows RAQ understands her situation, as they're both women in this male-dominated world. Juliana's being dominated by her husband, and in the same vein, they can be helpful to each other. Juliana can help to put RAQ in contact with her cousin, and RAQ can help Juliana, right? Recognizing this, RAQ lets her know, like, whenever you're ready, you let me know, and as you're being here for me, as you're helping me, I'm willing to help you in turn. And so with that, RAQ is now slated to have a meeting with Juliana's cousin at a boxing gym. But earlier that morning, she has their morning catch-up meeting with Lulu and Marvin at the apartment in Baisley. They're discussing plans for the day and whatnot. And this is the point at which Lulu tells them that he missed a shot at Warrell. At which point Marvin starts going in on him. And she kind of, tells him to tone it down, right? To worry about himself, his own problems, which is that the renovation he's supposed to be managing in the units is running behind schedule. But she then turns to Lulu and tells him that, she's made this meeting with Juliana's cousin in Washington Heights and she wants him to go with her. But I kind of pause because Lulu gives her this look where it's like, he just doesn't seem very enthused about any of this. I mean, she doesn't either, but like, he just seems to no longer want to be a part of any of this, right? Which I guess is understandable, but it's like, you're still spending money from this business. She's the one putting out a lot of these fires and figuring things out, finding solutions to these different problems. You might no longer want to be involved, but given how deep they're into it, it's like you're involved. Sure, you can start a plan to get out, but in the meantime, I'm going to need you to get your head in the game. The money you're spending on your record label, that money is coming from this drug business. And so while you might eventually want to scale down and get out of the business, in the meantime, you can't just drop things where they are and walk off, especially not if you're planning to continue benefiting from the money that's coming in. I don't think, from RAQ's perspective, I don't think her expectations within this context are unreasonable. Maybe a conversation needs to be had between the two of them about his desire to leave, but that's a conversation that needs to be had for a plan to be put in place, not for you to just like sulk and moan and whatnot. Kanan and Marvin have this little side hustle going on at the gas station. And so they're running low on drugs because the organization is running low on drugs. And so they take what they have, Kanan this is, with the two workers, and he decides that he's going to add this substance to it to try to stretch it out. Not knowing what it is, just that the guys tell him, that in Brooklyn they're going crazy over it because it's knocking everybody down. He uses his newly found cooking skills to make up a batch, which they package in vials with blue caps. He's carrying one of the vials on him when Howard rolls up. And Jukebox takes it from him and put it into her bag, at which point she then goes to meet with Nicole. Jukebox and Nicole are hanging out, and Nicole goes to put a card in Jukebox's bag, at which point she notices the blue vial and takes it upon herself to take it out of the bag. So, not knowing why this is there, she could have been causing some really big problems for Jukebox, right? I could understand if she took it out with the intention of confronting Jukebox about it, like, oh, you know, you're using drugs or whatever it is. But that's not the case. She takes it and doesn't say anything to Jukebox. So the issue is twofold. She doesn't know why it's in her bag, right? She doesn't know if it belongs to someone else. So she could be potentially creating a really big problem for Jukebox, especially because she hasn't told her that she's taken it out the bag. So the two of them go home. They're getting ready to attend this event. Her mom is in denial about her being a lesbian and has forced her to attend this event with like some random boy, right? The mom is really just doing the most. I mean, granted, this is like 91, and you have parents who would have a problem with their daughter being a lesbian, both back then and I think even now, right? The mom is kind of going overboard with trying to change her sexuality. The title of this episode is Stay in Your Lane. A lot of people here, a lot of the characters here within this episode, in the first half, they're having like happy, positive moments in their lives. But things go left when several of the characters overstep, right? They step out of line. They go beyond their area. You have like Famous, where he creates issues between Kanan and Davina by putting details about the Buck 20 situation into his song. He's overstepping, right? He's speaking about things that don't directly involve him. Then you have Nicole, right, with her parents. And then Nicole with Jukebox, right, where Nicole actually acts out of place by taking this vial out of Jukebox's backpack. Like, she should have left it where she found it. And you then also have her mom, where Nicole is her own person. She's going to like who she likes. You can't dictate that. But the mom tries to force her into dating this guy, and it just creates an unnecessarily stressful situation. So because of these things, because of people overstepping, you have Kanan, who's constantly butting into, like, getting himself involved with things that he should leave alone. You know, it's like he's pushed RAQ to teach him how to cook crack. She had no intentions of him using that knowledge right now. It's more of a break in case of emergency kind of skill. But he takes it upon himself at the stash spot with the Van Wyck crew, excluding Marvin. He takes it upon himself to start cooking, right? And he does so without checking with Marvin first. You know, they mentioned that he's kind of heavy with this additive that they're putting in to stretch the drugs. And so it's like he's taken it upon himself to do all of these things that no one's given him the authority to do. And so within each of these situations, with people acting out of their position, it's like they create problems for themselves, and not just themselves, but for the other characters as well. And from there, we then see the ramifications of this throughout the rest of the season, where it's like there's potential here in the first half for things to go really right. These people, these different characters, they step out of line. They're not playing their position. And so they then kind of destroy the potential for all of these good things happening for themselves and the other characters. So RAQ meets Juliana's cousin, and she's ready to move things forward. He's kind of, you know, a little bit slow on proceeding, right? He wants to wait a bit, I guess, kind of check things out and whatnot. He wants to make sure that the person he's dealing with isn't, as this isn't an illegal business, that he can trust them, you know? So it sounds like he's going to check the Carfax. Meanwhile, RAQ would like to get the ball rolling. She'd like to kind of just push forward, right? I've enjoyed this conversation. You know, in this situation, it's like the thing of that he takes the lead and thus she has to wait until he's ready. You know, in the meantime, she can't really do anything but just kind of sit and wait. She can try to figure out something in the interim, but with regards to him, she's going to have to just wait to see what decision he makes, you know, or whenever he reaches out to her again. So things with Juliana's cousin aren't moving quite as quickly as RAQ would like, but she needs disconnect. So she can't really do anything but just sit there and wait a minute, like give him time to figure things out. And so in this instance, she's kind of out of her lane because this is what she's really used to, you know? She has a lot of stress in her life because there's a lot going on, right? She's getting attacked from all sides, and it's not clear what time of day it is, but once again, she's taking a break from what she has going on to go and see Symphony. As usual, he's back to clapping her cheeks. But what I found interesting, and what's actually one of my favorite scenes in this episode, is the conversation that her and Symphony have afterwards, where it's like, you get these little insightful conversations from her after, I guess let's call it pillow talk, right? Like after her and Symphony are intimate. And it offers a lot of insight because she doesn't really have any friends like some of the other characters, right? And I wouldn't imagine her having these kinds of conversations with her brothers. It would be inappropriate for her to have these conversations with Kanan. So there's no one else for her to really talk to about her inner stuff as far as like what she's feeling, her plans for the future, things like that. But you see here that now having Symphony like in her life again, which is why I was so upset before, with the two of them being together, she's able to talk to him and can unload some of this stuff that she can't talk to anyone else in her life about. And so with that, you get a lot of insight into the character. Like she expresses to Symphony. Well, first, she apologizes to Symphony, right? And RAQ doesn't really apologize, yet she does in this instance. She apologizes for, not so much for being upset about him keeping Kanan's secrets, but more so her overboard reaction, right? I think the night of the showcase was a really stressful night for her after having been attacked by this guy, and it threw her off. So during her later conversation with Symphony, she came in way too hot and heavy with him. Her telling him that like he betrayed her and all this kind of stuff. It kind of seemed like not so much that she was threatening him, but that she could. And it was just like, this stuff about her not being for play and whatnot, it was just overboard. She was wrong. And I like that she took a moment to first apologize for that. But she then turned around and told Symphony that she actually appreciates that he was there for Kanan, because Kanan's father is not. And, his uncles are kind of doing their own thing. So with that, Kanan doesn't really have any positive role models in his life. And so she recognized that it's a benefit to have Symphony be there for Kanan. And I think it was really nice of her and necessary to express her appreciation for him being there for Kanan in his time of need. Because if you remember, Kanan mentioned that he reached out to Symphony rather than his uncles because when he tried to reach out to them, he couldn't get in touch. Definitely, if he'd called RAQ, she would have come and gotten him, right? But in trying to avoid her, he doesn't really have any other males in his life that he can wholeheartedly depend on. Having Symphony there is a tremendous benefit. He can be a positive influence in Kanan's life. He can be a positive influence in RAQ's life as well. And recognizing that, she thanks him for the role that he's playing in Kanan's life. And seeing the way that he interacts with Kanan, it gets her to thinking that with all of his qualities and characteristics, Symphony, number one, he'd be a great partner for RAQ, right? As far as a romantic partner, be that as boyfriend, potentially husband, whatever. And for Kanan, he would be a great father figure. Kanan is never going to be his son. But him coming into Kanan's life, even at the age of 15, can still have a tremendous impact on him. With that in mind, RAQ kind of points out that she sees how great he is with Kanan. She could only imagine how great he would be as a father, starting with a child that's his own, meaning starting from the beginning. By this point, RAQ and the people around her have influenced Kanan for the first, 15 years of his life? And just seeing Symphony come in and the impact he's already had, it's like, imagine having a child with this man where it's like from the very beginning, he's there to help shape and mold this kid. Being the man that he is, that kid would probably be amazing, right? RAQ, up until this point, hasn't been doing such a bad job with Kanan, right? RAQ recognizes this potential in Symphony. It speaks to her desires that she has for herself, that she kind of just jumps past them, like moving in together or getting married. And she specifically asks him about having kids, which, he kind of says like, maybe one day, depending on who the mom is and things like that. But she specifies like, no, what do you think about having kids with me, like me being the mother of your kids, right? Which would imply that she wants more kids, right? It would seem that regardless of however much of a knucklehead Kanan might be, that RAQ actually enjoys being a mother. It goes without saying that she loves Kanan. He's her baby. Regardless of whatever else is going on, he is the center of her life and she adores him. But with that, I think it says a lot that she wants more kids. That would imply that she enjoys being a mother. You get some insight into her inner desires, that this person she is right now, this persona, and I've always felt that it was a persona, because you see this clear division between who she is out on the street and then who she is at home. So this person that she is out on the street, I think it's an image that she puts on when she leaves the house. That's not the person that she really is, or at least it isn't really the person she wants to be, at least not for the rest of her life. She has hopes to one day leave this life behind, to move on, sure, to still make money from it, but to move on, to move Lou into a position to run things and have it where she can just collect money, right? So she's sacrificing for now, hoping that she might be able to live off of that investment later on. That she might be able to go on and do something else with her life, to have more kids, to live a different kind of life, as this isn't the life she sees herself living for the rest of her life. And I think it's really telling that she takes the time to explain that to Symphony, that like pretty much, I know the life I'm living right now is problematic. This person that I am right now is problematic, but I see it as being necessary to get to where I want to get to. She feels it's important to let him know that this person she is right now is not who she intends to be for the rest of her life. Basically, to just have a little bit of patience with her while she's working this stuff out and get into a place where she can step away. I recently watched the Supreme Team documentary on Showtime. It's like, I think produced by Nas. And Supreme made a good point. Most hustlers want to get out of that life. But the mistake that they make is making plans to get out of it. Because it's like when you make plans, there's always potential for something to go wrong. When such and such happens, then I'm going to step away. Or when I do blah, 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 or I have such and such in place, then I'm going to leave. That's when I'm going to stop. And it's like things always happen to mess up your plans. And he specifies when you're in that life and you want to get out, you can't have a plan. You can't wait for the perfect circumstances. You have to pretty much just get up one day and decide that you're done and walk away in that moment. I was rewatching Raising Kanan around the same time that I was watching the Supreme Team documentary, and hearing RAQ speak about this plan, I'd love for her to have that. I've said from the beginning that from the moment she started dating Symphony and I saw their exchange, that I liked them together, right? My best case scenario is that she runs away with this guy and just leaves this life behind, because there is no future here. But here, when she speaks about the life that she wants for herself, number one, I love the vision. But then secondly, it's like, if you know what's good for you, because you see all this stuff that's going on, Unique, right? There's a threat of death from him. Howard, which presents a threat of going to jail. It's like all these things that you have going on, you're just going to face more and more problems if you stay here. Your problems are mounting. If you want to get out of this life, you're better off leaving all of this behind and just making a run for it. Because if you want to be with Symphony, if you want to have this life, don't think, in the future where I get things to where I can walk away one day. That day is never going to come. There's never going to be perfect circumstances. If the life that you're describing, the life that you want with Symphony, having more kids, settling down, living a better life, if that's what you want, you kind of need to just tuck tail and run now. But then that goes back to this whole thing of like the Orion constellation from the first episode of being the hunter and not the hunted, where it's like she's looking to win. She's not looking to, like, walking away at this point would feel like they forced her out of the game. And I don't think she's going to go for that. I think that potentially, if anything, will end up being her downfall. It's like, if you want a different life, run, don't walk. Run away and leave that alone, right? Run towards that life. That in and of itself is a win. Each of the Thomas kids have picked up something from their father. Lulu picked up music. When RAQ goes to meet with Juliana's cousin and at a boxing gym, she states that her father used to box when she was very young. He was like 135, right? And so you can see where Marvin has gotten his like boxing skills from, right? Because you can see like Marvin can box. He can handle himself physically. And so between that, you see at least each one of the boys has learned or taken something from their dad. Right? Marvin boxing, Lulu music. And so the question that I then had was, looking at RAQ, what, if anything, has RAQ taken from their father? Like thus far, you've just heard little drips and drabbles about the parents. what we've learned about the dad is that he was a musician and a boxer, and he's passed on one of those traits to each of his sons. But looking at RAQ, I couldn't help but wonder, what, if any, influence did he have on her? So Unique approaches Lulu about him switching sides, sort of like a Hail Mary pass, right? RAQ wants Lulu to just focus on the drug business. Unique states that in his organization, he actually encourages his guys to have side hustles, to have other things that they're interested in, other ways to make money. And so he actually applauds Lulu for having outside interests, something that RAQ has not done. He says nice things to him to stroke his ego, something that RAQ does not do. You know, he's important to her organization, but she doesn't always applaud her brothers or tell them that she appreciates them. I mean, granted, they don't do that for her either, right? But I found it telling that Unique managed to touch on those different points, right? Kanan is now more deeply involved in the drug business, despite RAQ telling him to stop. In this case, she's taught him how to cook, but with no expectation of him actually using those skills, at least not now. So he cooks up a batch of drugs, and it's too potent because they've used rat poison, which is just killing people left and right, creating huge problems for them. Marvin only becomes involved after the fact, but he holds Kanan down, and they decide to just keep this very quiet and not let anyone know, right? Especially not RAQ, because they're afraid of what might happen then. And here you have this scene with RAQ and Jukebox, where once again they're alone talking, and it's once again about relationships. This time RAQ isn't really sharing anything about hers, it's all about Jukebox, where she's walked in on Jukebox getting dressed to attend this ball with Nicole. Jukebox has picked out a tuxedo as she felt most comfortable in that. She gets dressed and she does like this little dance and whatnot. So Jukebox is here getting dressed in Kanan's room because, you know, she doesn't want to get dressed at home where Marvin might see it. So when RAQ comes in, she kind of pauses for a second, taking in the scene, but then she smiles and asks Jukebox, like, you know, what's going on? And she explains that she's going to this fancy event. And it's at this point that RAQ, I think, again, trying to open up this pathway of communication, asks her who she's going with. Kind of in this case, putting her on the spot. During their earlier conversation, she left the opening, but didn't really push for it, right? Here, she pretty much just comes out and asks Jukebox specifically, who are you going with? Not like in an aggressive fashion, pretty nicely. At which point she states, like, whoever it is that you're going with, they're going to be happy when you walk in, right? Basically telling her, like, you look great. And so it's at this point that Jukebox tells her that she's going with Nicole. And the way that she says it, it's obvious that this is a female that she's speaking about. She's dressed in a tuxedo. She's going to this ball or soiree, whatever it is, with a girl. And with that, by this point, Kanan has met Nicole, as has Famous. And while they haven't fully had the conversation, you know, he knows that Jukebox likes girls, but it's not something they've openly discussed. But here it is that she pretty much comes out to RAQ, right? At which point there's like no real big reaction from RAQ. She simply smiles at her and tells her that she looks nice, and then goes on to explain to her that, you know, she's not Marvin. She doesn't really care who the person is that Jukebox is seeing, just as long as the person makes her happy. You know, her concern is less about who Jukebox is dating and more about whether or not she's happy. And I think that's actually quite sweet, because it's like throughout this series, we've had this thing of Jukebox like sneaking around to see Nicole, and then also in part hiding herself, right? This part of herself. And I would think that you would want to be, especially for someone like RAQ, who you've had such a close relationship with, especially in your younger years, you know, where you guys would sit up and have girl talk and stuff like that, talking throughout the night. This person, you'd want to be able to be your full authentic self with them. And to have to keep a secret like this from them would be a lot. Here it is that now you can share this part of yourself with them and they still accept you. I would assume that'd be ideal. It would make you feel good. It would be a relief. You can kind of see like the look of apprehension when she tells RAQ that she's going with Nicole, and she kind of takes a pause. You know, RAQ takes a pause, but like she doesn't stop smiling at her. Her smile doesn't turn into a frown. You know, when Jukebox says she's going with the girl, she smiles and actually walks forward and offers her like reassurance, encouragement, things that Jukebox is not getting from her dad. And I thought that exchange was actually a really nice touch. So meanwhile, Kanan is sitting on the couch watching TV, and unbeknownst to RAQ, at least at this point, he's put out these vials that are laced with rat poison that's going to kill a bunch of people. But in addition to that, which was something I wondered about when they were at the restaurant, you kind of notice that she doesn't say anything in the moment, but like the camera turns to her when Kanan and Symphony are going back and forth about who's going to pay the bill. And you notice like her fork kind of pauses, but she lets the moment go, which I thought was like some really great acting and also good camera work. And it's not until the end of the episode when she's sitting down with Kanan in the living room, she like comes and sit like right next to him. And it's like this thing where it's like something will happen and she won't react right there in that moment. You know, she'll give Kanan time to come and talk to her about it before bringing it up or calling him out on it. And like, that's what she does here. But she's not as aggressive with him as she had been in some of the previous situations. She comes and sits right next to him, puts her arm around him and like smiles at him. And, you know, she says that she saw Symphony and they were talking about how much of a good time they had out in their double date and they'd like to do it again. She uses that to segue into talking to Kanan about, you know, that she wondered where he'd gotten the money from, right? Because this is a fancy restaurant and it doesn't sound like RAQ buys him stuff and he probably has pocket money, but it doesn't sound like she gives him huge amounts of cash to just carry about. A responsible parent would ask, where are you getting money from to buy something like this? Where do you get money from to pay for like an expensive dinner like this? And so with that, when she sits down, she asks him about it. But something that you notice is that in their previous exchanges, when RAQ doesn't want to engage in a topic, right? When she wants to change the subject, when it's something she's uncomfortable with, she would bring up school, right? Like Kanan's performance in school as a way of changing the subject. But now you see that Kanan is kind of doing it to her as well. When he doesn't want to discuss the subject, he'll bring up something else. So like in the previous episode, when she was cutting his hair and brought up the fact that he got picked up by the police and started questioning him about it, she already knew about it. She found out about it from Scrappy. But when he wanted to change the subject, it ended up switching the subject when he brought up that Howard was chatting him up and asking all these kinds of weird questions and whatnot, right? Like she shifted focus when he brought up Howard. And so in this instance, again, where she sits down and she starts questioning him about where he got this money from, like she keeps asking questions and doesn't let it go. He tells her that he had some money saved up from the stash spot and that he also had Jukebox sell some clothes for him. And so she pushes on it, right? Like, well, what clothes exactly? And he can't answer. So he's like, oh, well, I don't know. And she's like pushing him, really trying to like trip him up. But he kind of catches her off guard and that he turns around and flips the script on her, right? Bringing up Howard because it worked before. When she was asking him about him getting like, arrested, well, not arrested, but picked up, he brought up the cop and that ended the conversation, right? Like it ended the line of questioning where she was going. But here he deploys it, I think intentionally this time, as a way to shift the conversation to stop her from asking him about where he got the money from, right? Because he likely got the money from his dealings with Marvin, but he obviously can't tell her that. So to get around it, he shifts the focus to Howard stopping by and talking to him again, which automatically sets her off, right? You see, she sits forward, she takes her arm from around him. And so basically, she's like so concerned with Howard that it throws her off, that she forgets all about continuing her line of questioning, about where he got this money from for the restaurant. So here's this thing, right, that you have going on. You notice these little manipulations between the characters, right? Where it's like, she manipulates him at some points, but now you see that he's kind of learned from her and he's turning that around on her, where it's like now you see him manipulating her as well. Throughout the season, like usually I'm not into soap opera type shows, right? But I've liked the different relationships in this show. I like the way that they handle them in that it's not a lot of unnecessary drama with people going back and forth. But the combination of the stuff going on in the street as well as the romantic relationships just hitting all the right notes, right? Like all of that combines into why this is my favorite episode. But the thing about it is that it's great at the beginning because there's now so much potential for these people that the things that they want in their personal lives, their romantic relationships, as well as, I guess, if you want to call it like their professional relationships. It seems like things are looking up. They're headed in the right direction. There's so much promise and potential. It's like you're happy in the beginning, but you're going to end up being heartbroken in the end because Nicole ends up overdosing from the blue top vial that she found in Jukebox's bag. On this night where all these great and positive things have happened for Jukebox, where she's going out with this girl that she likes, she's come out to RAQ, RAQ still loves and accepts her. On that very same day when she's supposed to be going to this party, everything falls apart. When I tell you that my heart broke for Jukebox, that finally she bites up the nerve and tells RAQ that, she's dating this girl and, comes out to RAQ. RAQ encourages her. She goes off to attend this ball with Nicole, and to see Nicole smoke that damn blue cap and have her drop to the ground dead, it's like, when I tell you this show, plays with my emotions. When I saw that, I was like, Nicole is a cool girl. To see her die like that, it's messed up. But then in the next scene, what really drove it home and messed me up, the first time I saw it was Jukebox sitting there waiting on the bench, across from the hotel, the venue, or whatever it is, wherever this event is being held. Here it is that you have all these young men and ladies showing up for this event. They're dressed in their suits, their tuxedos, gowns, and whatnot. And she's there excitedly waiting for Nicole. And you in the audience knowing that, well, she doesn't know it as yet, but knowing that Nicole is never going to show up. And not just that she's not going to show up, that she's never going to see her again. To experience that heartbreak, I think most people begin dating as teens, and stuff most likely won't work out with everyone that you date. So you experience heartbreak and stuff like that as a teen, but it's usually just, you and the person break up, or you decide to stop speaking to each other, you move away, whatever it is, you move on. But for your first relationship to end because the person dies, and in such a fashion, it's like, granted, Nicole shouldn't have taken the vial out of Jukebox's bag, but the guilt that you would feel in having that vial in your bag and knowing that she took it. Thanks for tuning in. 7 down, 3 more to go. So be sure to check back tomorrow and every day after that as I count down to Raising Kanan Season 2 premiere on August 14th. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my Rolling with RAQ playlist. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media. More importantly, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Are you rolling with RAQ or someone else? What do you think about the relationships here? And how did you feel when you saw, stuff go down with Nicole?